Have you ever wondered when diesel really took over? When gasoline, once the workhorse of every truck and bus, quietly stepped aside? That moment began with one engine, the Detroit Diesel 71 series. Born in the late 1930s under General Motors, the 71 was built to last longer, work harder, and run on fuel that didn't burn through your wallet. It was small enough for trucks, strong enough for tanks, and simple enough to rebuild on the side of the road. From factories to fishing boats, this engine turned the idea of power on its head. Gasoline had speed, but diesel had stamina, and Detroit Diesel proved it. This is the story of the 71 series. The engine that powered a nation, reshaped industries, and made gasoline engines sound like they belonged in the past. Detroit, 1938. A city running on gasoline, noise, and ambition. Every shop, bus, and delivery truck burned through petrol like it was endless. Diesel, at that time, was a word you'd associate with ships or stationary generators. Too heavy, too slow, too dirty for everyday use. But tucked away inside General Motors' new diesel division, a handful of engineers were quietly designing something that didn't fit any of those old ideas. They were designing something modular, efficient, and light enough to run in a truck, yet powerful enough to move a tank. It was an ambitious idea, maybe even reckless for its time, but GM had the resources and vision to try it. The man leading that effort, Charles Kettering, believed in simplicity through precision, and under his guidance, the blueprint of the Detroit Diesel 71 series began to take shape. The concept was surprisingly straightforward. Each cylinder displaced 71 cubic inches, hence the name, and the entire engine family was built around that single measurement. Need more power? Add more cylinders. Need less? Take some away. Inline, V-shaped, single, twin, or 12, it was all part of the same family. The design was efficient and adaptable. That modularity became the secret weapon that allowed Detroit Diesel to power an enormous range of machines without reinventing the wheel every time. But the true genius of the 71 was the way it ran. Unlike most four-stroke diesels that relied on heavy components and slow cycles, the 71 operated on a two-stroke principle. That means it fired every revolution, delivering more consistent power in a smaller package. The engine breathed through a roots blower, which was essentially a mechanical lung forcing air into the cylinders, and that gave it a crisp, almost musical rhythm when running. Crews who later worked with it would call it the Detroit Bark. The early versions, the 671, 471, and 871, weren't glamorous. They were all function, square edges, exposed bolts, nothing flashy. But when mechanics got their hands on them, they saw something new. These engines could be pulled apart, repaired, and running again before the end of a shift. There were no exotic parts or specialized tools, just straightforward engineering that made sense to anyone who knew their way around an engine bay. The first big break came when the US military took notice. As World War II loomed, there was a desperate need for reliable diesel power in everything from landing craft to armored vehicles. The 71 fit perfectly. It was compact, dependable, and easy to maintain in rough conditions. What started as a Detroit experiment soon became a national workhorse. By the time the decade ended, diesel had a new face and a new sound. The Detroit Diesel 71 series had turned what was once a niche fuel into the standard for power that lasts. And while the world didn't know it yet, this unassuming engine from Michigan was about to silence gasoline's dominance, one cylinder at a time. When war broke out, Detroit's factories roared to life. Assembly lines that once built cars were now turning out engines for ships, tanks, and generators. And right in the middle of that transformation was the Detroit Diesel 71 series. The military needed something simple, reliable, and easy to fix in the field. Gasoline engines were powerful, but they were temperamental. They were prone to fires, hard to start in cold or wet conditions, and wasteful under load. The 71 series, by contrast, thrived where others failed. It could sit for weeks in freezing weather and still start with a cough and a puff of gray smoke. It burned less fuel, shrugged off neglect, and ran just as well half submerged in salt spray as it did on land. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, the Detroit diesel bark became part of the soundtrack of the Allied advance. You could hear it echoing from the LCIs and LCMs. It powered bulldozers carving airstrips out of mud and tanks crawling through ruined cities. Even naval support ships relied on it for generators and auxiliary systems. The same engine that powered a truck in Detroit could, with a few changes, run a landing craft on the other side of the world. That versatility made it invaluable. The 671 alone became a legend. It was the kind of engine soldiers trusted because it didn't ask for finesse. Pour in diesel, keep it oiled, and it would keep turning. No fuss, no mystery. It was mechanical honesty in a war built on improvisation. The engine's two-stroke design was part of its magic. Where a gasoline motor needed constant attention to timing and spark, the 71's simple layout meant fewer things could go wrong. It didn't mind rough fuel or uneven maintenance. It could run underwater for short periods, something that proved vital during amphibious operations. By the end of the war, Detroit Diesel had built tens of thousands of units. They powered every imaginable machine, from Sherman tanks to cargo trucks to naval support vessels. And when the fighting stopped, those same engines returned home, repurposed for construction sites, fishing boats, and farms. When the war ended, Detroit Diesel didn't slow down. It simply shifted gears. The factories that had once built engines for tanks and landing craft now turned their attention to America's roads, farms, and harbors. Soldiers returned home and found familiar sounds waiting for them. The same rough, steady bark of the 671 that had carried them through the war now echoing from trucks, tractors, and tugboats. The country was rebuilding, expanding, and moving faster than ever. Trucking companies wanted engines that wouldn't quit halfway up a mountain pass. Farmers needed power units that could run irrigation pumps or generators for months at a time. And tugboat captains demanded engines that could idle all day and still pull a barge through a winter storm. Gasoline engines had tried to meet that demand before, but they simply couldn't take the punishment. They ran hot, wore out fast, and needed careful maintenance. The 71 series thrived under that kind of pressure. It was never delicate, and that was the point. You could run it hard, rebuild it in a shed, and have it back on the job within days. The parts were modular, interchangeable, and simple enough that anyone with a set of wrenches could tear one down. Where a gasoline engine might last a few thousand hours before calling it quits, the Detroit Diesel could be rebuilt again and again, logging decades of service. The 671 quickly became a favorite for long-haul truckers. Its compact design meant it could fit under narrow hoods, and its torque pulled loads that left gas rigs wheezing. Mechanics liked it because it was honest. Noisy, smoky, but always dependable. Then came the bigger siblings. The 8V71, 12V71, and even the monstrous 16V71. These engines powered everything from buses to dump trucks to mining machines and small ships. By the mid-1950s, the rhythm of American industry had changed. Gasoline engines, by comparison, began to feel outdated. They were quieter, yes, but also fragile. More suited to passenger cars than to the heavy-duty heart of post-war America. Diesel had proven itself, not just as an alternative, but as the new standard. From coast to coast, Jimmy-powered became a badge of pride. By the 1960s, the sound of progress had a name. Gasoline hadn't vanished, but in the world of real work, it had been outclassed. The secret behind the Detroit Diesel 71 series wasn't hidden in complexity, it was genius in simplicity. This was an engine designed to be understood, fixed, and trusted by anyone who worked with machines. At its heart was a two-stroke cycle that gave it its signature rhythm, that rapid-fire bark that sounded more alive than any other engine on the planet. Instead of relying on turbos or complicated air systems, the 71 used a Roots blower, which was a compact air pump that shoved fresh air into the cylinders every time the pistons dropped. That constant rush of air meant instant throttle response and consistent power across the rev range. The result was an engine that pulled hard from idle to redline with no hesitation. Then came the modular layout. 71 cubic inches per cylinder, multiply it however you liked. Need a smaller engine? Take 3 cylinders. Need more? Add 6, 8, 12, even 16. The same pistons, rods, injectors, and gaskets fit across the entire family. To a mechanic, that meant one set of tools, one shelf of parts, and an infinite range of possibilities. If you could service one Detroit diesel, you could service them all. That was the real magic. The 71 series was adaptable. It ran trucks, tugboats, tanks, cranes, generators, buses, and sawmills. Farmers used it, loggers used it, soldiers used it. Offshore rigs ran them for decades without a hiccup, and when one finally wore out, it was rebuilt, again and again. These engines didn't retire, they just got new rings and bearings and went back to work. And then there was the sound. The 71 didn't hum or purr, it barked, cracked, and sang in its own rhythm. In logging camps across the Pacific Northwest, in the engine rooms of shrimp boats, on oil rigs hundreds of miles offshore, you could recognize that sound instantly. It was the soundtrack of work, grit, and persistence. By the 1970s, the world that Detroit Diesel had helped shape was changing. New emission standards, fuel regulations, and a growing push for quieter, cleaner engines began to change the old order. The same rugged simplicity that once made the 71 series a hero now made it a target. Two strokes, by their nature, burned dirtier. They smoked more, rattled louder, and guzzled fuel compared to the rising wave of efficient 4-stroke diesels. For most companies, that was the end of the line. But the 71 wasn't like most engines. It refused to die. While big manufacturers retired their 2-stroke designs, Detroit Diesel's 71 series found new life in the corners of the world that couldn't afford to quit. Fleets of fishing boats, tug operators, construction yards, and logging outfits, they all stuck with what worked. These were people who valued dependability over compliance, and for them, the 71 was irreplaceable. A new 4-stroke might save fuel, but it couldn't take abuse like the old 2-stroke. When you were hundreds of miles offshore, or deep in the woods, or working through the night at a power station, you didn't need perfect emissions. You needed an engine that would start, run, and keep running. That's exactly what the 71 did. Through the 1980s and into the 1990s, thousands of them were still in service, humming away in backup generators, marine engines, and heavy equipment long after the world had moved on. In scrapyards and surplus lots, old Detroit diesels were salvaged, rebuilt, and repurposed. Mechanics who grew up on them passed their knowledge to apprentices, keeping the culture alive. You didn't need a computer to fix one, just a wrench, a gasket set, and a sense of rhythm. Detroit Diesel itself evolved. The company introduced cleaner, more modern engines, shifted towards the Series 60, and adapted to the changing times. But even as technology marched forward, the 71 never truly disappeared. It became a foundation and a benchmark by which every Detroit engine that followed would be judged. Engineers still talked about its durability, its modular design, and its unmistakable sound. In a way, every Detroit diesel built afterward carried a piece of the 71's DNA. Meanwhile, the gasoline engine, once the heartbeat of America's machines, quietly slipped into the background. Its decline happened gradually, drowned out by the mechanical rhythm of diesels like the 71. Trucks, ships, and heavy machinery moved away from spark plugs and carburetors, choosing compression and torque instead. The world had changed its soundtrack, from the whine of gasoline to the deep rolling thunder of diesel power. Even today, decades after production officially ended, you can still find 71s running in the hulls of old tugs, powering sawmills, or idling beside rural workyards. They're scratched, repainted, rebuilt a dozen times over, but they're still alive. Each one is a living reminder of a time when engineering was built for endurance, not obsolescence. The 71 outlasted eras, technologies, and expectations. While cleaner engines came and went, the Detroit Diesel 71 series kept doing what it was built to do: turn fuel into power and keep the world moving. The death of gasoline wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow, steady fade, buried under the steady, unbroken rhythm of a Detroit two-stroke that refused to go quiet. The legacy of the Detroit 71 series is in the stories of the people who built, maintained, and depended on these engines every single day. From the logging camps to the docks, from trucks on endless highways to ships powering across oceans, the 71 series left its mark on generations of machines and the people behind them. If you've ever worked on, heard, or seen a Detroit 71 series in action, you know it doesn't whisper, it announces itself. Was it a truck, a bus, a tugboat, or a generator that left the biggest impression on you? Did it roar to life under your hands or under the watchful eye of an operator? Also, let us know your favorite 71 memory, because here, every story matters. And every engine has a voice. Share your stories in the comments. Whether you're a trucker, sailor, engineer, or a collector, we want to hear what the 71 series meant to you. Did it save the day, push through impossible workloads, or just make your mornings unforgettable with that unmistakable sound? And if you love exploring the machines that reshaped industries and defined entire eras, hit subscribe and ring the bell. There's plenty more coming.